Welcome back to Conversations That Awaken by Joe Bandra. If you've been with us since episode 1, thank you for taking this journey with us. Over the first 10 episodes, we've questioned many of the assumptions most of us inherited without ever examining them. We've explored the nature of reality, the illusion of separation, the origins of belief, the question of God, the self-organizing universe, the fact of being, the limits of language, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. You may have noticed that we've returned to some of the same ideas more than once. That wasn't by accident. Some truths cannot be understood by hearing them only once. They must be approached from different angles, examined through different lenses, and reflected upon until they become your own direct insight. Repetition is not about convincing you, it is about inviting you to observe more deeply. Our purpose has never been to give you another belief system. It has always been to encourage you to examine, question, investigate, and ultimately understand for yourself. Because borrowed knowledge is information. Direct experience, on the other hand, is transformation. If you're joining us for the first time, we encourage you to begin with episode 1. Each conversation builds upon the previous one, forming a journey from questioning the world to questioning the one who believes they are separate from it. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for listening. Take a moment to become fully present. Set aside, just for a little while, everything you think you know. And together, let's question everything. I am Kim. I hope you had the opportunity to read or listen to Finding Neve by Joe Bandra. The name Neve, heaven spelled backward, symbolizes a journey of self-discovery, an inward return to the source of true happiness. It is an invitation to look beyond the stories we tell ourselves, rediscover our authentic nature, and awaken to the peace and wholeness that have always been within us.
You know, it's usually when we think about the concept of praying or like writing a letter to God, there's this built-in expectation of silence.
Right.
It's sort of like dropping a coin down a bottomless well.
Mm-hmm.
You write out your most angry, desperate, terrifying thoughts. You fold the paper up, and you just sort of accept the void.
Yeah, you don't actually expect the universe to mail you a letter back.
No, exactly.
It's inherently a one-way street, and culturally, I mean, we are deeply conditioned to accept that.
Right.
We vent, we ask for help, and then we wait for some vague sign in our lives, but we never expect a direct conversational reply.
And honestly, the silence is almost comforting in a weird way.
Yeah.
Because the void lets you fill in the blanks with whatever you need to feel in that moment.
Yeah.
But then you step into the story of this man in the spring of 1995.
Oh, yeah.
He has hit absolute rock bottom. I mean, his career is in shambles. His relationships are falling apart. His health is failing.
Just everything at once.
Everything.
Yeah.
And he wakes up in the middle of the night, sits down with a yellow legal pad, and writes a furiously angry letter to God, asking why his life is such a struggle.
Right.
And suddenly that well isn't bottomless anymore.
Right.
The silence breaks. His pen just starts moving, and he actually gets answers.
It is the absolute definition of a paradigm-shifting moment, not just for him, but for the culture at large.
Yeah.
Because that man was Neale Donald Walsch. And those late-night yellow notepad sessions became Conversations with God.
Right.
Which is a book, well, really a phenomenon, that fundamentally rewired modern spirituality for millions and millions of people.
Oh, completely.
It took the idea of an untouchable, punishing deity and replaced it with a conversational, accessible presence.
And it's such a beautiful, comforting text for so many people. But today, on this deep dive, we aren't just reading the book to feel good.
No.
We are putting it under the microscope.
Yeah.
Because we have a really fascinating piece of source material to guide us today. It's an insightful essay from a larger work called Conversations That Awaken by Joe Bandra. Now, Bandra is a really interesting figure because he actually met Walsch.
Right, in Chicago, I think.
Yeah, he hung out with him in Chicago. He respects him immensely. But he decides to subject this iconic text to a rigorous intellectual stress test.
And that is precisely what makes Bandra's essays so compelling. He isn't coming at this as a cynic trying to tear down someone's spiritual experience.
Exactly.
The mission of our deep dive today isn't to tell anyone what to believe or to debunk the idea of the divine. The goal is to balance the absolute joy of spiritual discovery with rigorous critical thinking.
Right, like keeping your feet on the ground.
Exactly. We are going to look at Walsh's work by cross-referencing it with philosophy, psychology, astrophysics, metaphysics, and just the plain old reality of everyday living.
Yes. Because it is incredibly easy to read something comforting, something that feels divinely inspired, and just completely lose your footing and float off into the woo-woo.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Right. We want to stay grounded.
Mm-hmm.
This deep dive is really a shortcut to understanding how to critically evaluate any spiritual idea, any New Age concept, so you can navigate this stuff without checking your brain at the door. So let's jump right into the first major point where Bandra and Walsch actually see eye to eye. And it's a big one.
Yeah.
It's the unpersoning of God.
Unpersoning is the perfect term for it. The first major agreement between them is that God is not a supernatural human being sitting somewhere outside the universe,
Right.
pulling levers and keeping a tally of your sins.
Okay, let's unpack this, because culturally, we tend to view the universe like a giant car engine, right?
Sure.
You have all these moving parts. And God is the mechanic.
Oh, right.
He's standing outside of the engine holding a wrench.
Yeah.
He leans in, tweaks a spark plug here, tightens a belt there, maybe he smacks the side of it if it's acting up.
Yeah, that's a very common image.
But this source argues God isn't the mechanic. God is the combustion, the momentum, the drive itself. I love that imagery. But practically speaking, how does viewing God as a process rather than a person actually change how we look at our own existence?
Well, think about the implications of the mechanic metaphor.
Okay.
If God is a mechanic with a wrench holding all the power outside of you, what is your relationship to that mechanic?
You beg him to fix things.
Right. You try to bribe him with good behavior. You fear him if the engine breaks down, assuming you did something to make him mad.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But if God is the combustion itself, the chemical process of life, you can't negotiate with a chemical reaction.
Right.
You can't bribe gravity. You just have to align yourself with how the engine actually runs.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It shifts the entire dynamic from a transaction to a state of flow.
Exactly. And logically speaking, if you say God is a being located somewhere, a mechanic outside the engine, you immediately run into a wall of unanswerable questions.
Like what?
Well, where did that being come from?
Yeah.
What surrounds it? If God is in a place, what is outside that place?
Oh, right. It just creates an infinite loop.
Exactly. Placing God as an entity puts God inside the very reality that God is supposed to be explaining.
Oh, that's fascinating.
The source points out that reality has to be a principle, a fundamental process, not a person.
Because when we call God a person, we are basically just projecting all our own human baggage onto the universe.
Precisely.
Suddenly, God is angry. God is jealous. God is disappointed that you didn't go to a specific building on a specific day of the week.
We manufacture this giant cosmic human personality and basically just worship our own psychological neuroses.
Right. And what's wild is that the science actually backs this up without even needing theology.
What's fascinating here is how astrophysics actually mirrors this concept of interconnected process,
Yeah.
completely independent of religion. If you look at the fundamental nature of the universe, there is no evidence of isolated self-existing things. Everything is a process related to another process.
Right. The source gives these beautiful concrete examples of this. Like the carbon in your cells literally comes from stellar processes. Long dead stars had to explode so that your physical body could eventually form.
It's incredible.
And the oxygen you are breathing right now physically links your lungs to forests and oceans thousands of miles away.
That's not poetry. That is physical mechanics.
Yeah.
When a star goes supernova, it acts as a forge, creating the heavier elements like carbon and iron.
Right.
That iron is literally pumping through your veins right now, carrying the oxygen that the trees exhaled. So you are not a fundamentally separate entity living inside a box of disconnected objects.
Wow.
You are an active participant in a continuous 14 billion-year-old unfolding event.
That is just so wild to think about.
And when you look at the mystical traditions across cultures, across centuries, they report the exact same thing.
That we're all connected.
That the boundary between the individual and the whole eventually dissolves. There's no separate observer standing outside life.
So we are the combustion.
Yeah.
We are the oxygen, the carbon, the process.
Yes.
But hold on. If we accept this, if God isn't this grumpy mechanic keeping score from the sidelines, and we are just intrinsically part of the process, what happens to the concept of sin? What happens to the human fear of being punished? Because that fear is a massive driver of human behavior.
That is the pivotal question. And it brings us to the second major point of agreement in Bandra's essay.
Okay.
Fear-based religion fundamentally distorts human psychology. When you teach people that they are separate from the whole and that they are being judged by a personified deity, the psychological toll is devastating.
The source gets really granular about this. Bandra talks about what happens when you teach a child about an always watching, always recording, punishing God.
Yeah, the inner surveillance.
He calls it installing inner surveillance. And I found this concept terrifyingly accurate.
It is. I mean, imagine what happens to a developing brain when it is told that its very thoughts are being monitored by an invisible, perfect judge.
It's so much pressure.
The mind literally divides itself into factions to survive that anxiety. One part holds your natural human desires, your doubts, your everyday messy emotions.
Right.
The other part becomes this internalized, harsh authority figure constantly whispering, you shouldn't think that, or you were impure for feeling that way.
It's like installing a CCTV camera in your own subconscious. You become your own jailer.
And here's the real danger. That inner conflict cannot stay contained.
He has to come out.
Psychological pressure always seeks a release valve. The source maps out this mechanism of projection perfectly.
Okay, walk me through that.
If you are taught that you are separate, that separation produces an underlying anxiety or fear. Fear inevitably produces guilt, the feeling that you aren't doing enough to appease the watcher.
Right.
Guilt is too heavy to carry, so it produces projection. You start looking for people outside of yourself to blame. And projection produces conflict.
So if I am terrified of my own internal doubts or my own suppressed desires, I am highly likely to attack someone else who is living out those desires.
Exactly.
Or someone who holds different beliefs. I become obsessed with controlling others because I am desperately trying to control the suppressed parts of myself.
Precisely. This is why historical atrocities have so often been carried out in the name of a punishing God.
It is outward aggression fueled by inward terror.
Yes. Moving from fear to love isn't just a nice, fluffy greeting card sentiment that Walsch put in a book. It is a necessary psychological intervention.
Wow.
And the antidote to that fear is the realization of oneness. Bandra uses this brilliant metaphysical metaphor of the ocean and the wave to explain how to get there safely.
Right, the wave in the ocean. Yeah, classic metaphor, but I feel like Bandra deploys it very carefully here.
He does.
The idea is that every person is a wave in the ocean of life. You have a temporary shape, a name, a specific history. You rise up, you crash, you disappear.
Right.
But at no point does a wave exist separately from the ocean. It is made entirely of ocean.
But notice the crucial distinction he makes regarding the human ego. There is a massive difference between a wave realizing it is made of water and a wave shouting, I am the entire ocean.
Oh, this is the nuance I wanted to get into. Because there's a trap here.
A huge trap.
Bandra points out the difference between saying, I am God, versus saying, I am an expression of reality.
Exactly. If I say, I, this specific individual personality, with my specific name and my specific opinions, am God, that is a disaster.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It inflates the ego to massive narcissistic proportions. You see this in certain spiritual communities where people start acting incredibly grandiose.
Right.
But if I say the same indivisible reality that powers the stars and the trees is temporarily appearing as this specific body, that dissolves the ego.
Oh, I see.
It humbles you. It's the difference between claiming you own the ocean versus realizing you are just water flowing alongside other water.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because we all know that person. I call it the enlightened jerk paradox.
The enlightened jerk, okay.
As the person who goes to an ayahuasca retreat or reads a stack of spiritual books and comes back claiming that they have transcended the ego.
Oh yeah, we've all met them.
They talk constantly about how we are all one and how the self is an illusion, but then they act absolutely terribly in everyday life.
Right.
They are arrogant, they are dismissive of other people's pain, they don't tip at restaurants. Isn't it just infinitely easier to sit around talking about waves and oceans than it is to just be kind to the waiter who got your lunch order wrong?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of everyday living, Bandra would validate your pushback completely. In fact, he insists on it.
Oh, really?
Spirituality is not the vocabulary you use. It is not your ability to recite complex metaphors about waves and oceans. It is entirely about your conduct in the mundane moments of life.
Right.
How do you treat a waiter, an immigrant, a political opponent, or a homeless child, especially when you are personally inconvenienced?
It's what you do when your flight gets delayed by 4 hours, not what you chant on the yoga mat when the incense is burning.
Exactly. The source argues that true mystical oneness isn't a certificate you earn, and it isn't an intellectual concept you memorize so you can sound smart at dinner parties.
Right.
In direct, genuine mystical awareness, oneness is experienced as the actual disappearance of the psychological separation that causes you to snap at the waiter in the first place.
Okay, wait, explain that. What does that actually mean, the disappearance of psychological separation?
Oh.
Because if I'm looking at a menu, there's definitely an isolated me deciding if I want the chicken or the fish. I'm not the waiter.
Functionally, yes, you are a distinct biological organism ordering food. But psychologically, when that inner surveillance we talked about earlier drops away, the need to defend your ego drops away with it.
Oh.
You stop seeing the waiter as an obstacle to your happiness or a subordinate whose mistake threatens your status.
Right.
You just see another expression of life, tired, making a mistake. There is seeing, but the defensive, isolated seer who needs to prove a point isn't there. There is action, but no ego desperately trying to control the outcome.
Wow. It's liberating. You don't have to earn your belonging in existence.
No, you don't.
You already belong, so you don't have to fight everyone for your patch of ground.
Exactly.
So Walsch and Bandra are totally aligned on this beautiful, liberating vision of an interconnected, non-punishing reality. But this is where the honeymoon abruptly ends.
Yes, it does.
We've established the common ground, but now we have to get into the danger of divine authority.
Yes. This is the first of 3 major fundamental disagreements between the two.
Okay.
While Bandra deeply respects Walsch and his initial experience, he firmly rejects the core premise that drives the entire Conversations with God series.
Which is?
The idea that an inner voice popping into your head should automatically be treated as God's unquestionable authoritative voice.
Okay, I think about this phenomenon all the time. I call it the shower epiphany.
The shower epiphany.
We've all had that moment, right? You're standing in the shower, you're shampooing your hair, you're completely zoned out, not actively thinking about anything.
Oh, absolutely.
And suddenly, boom, the perfect solution to a problem at work just pops into your head, fully formed.
It feels like magic.
It literally feels like it was beamed into your brain from space. Are we just way too quick to assign divine authorship to our own brain's incredible ability to connect dots in the background?
Yeah, the scientific and psychological evidence strongly suggests that we are. We tend to vastly underestimate our own brains.
Interesting.
The human mind, specifically the unconscious mind, is a wildly, immensely creative pattern recognition machine.
Right.
Over your lifetime, you have absorbed thousands of books, millions of conversations, cultural tropes, vocabulary, and subtle emotional cues. Your unconscious mind is constantly synthesizing that data.
So how does that result in a voice or an epiphany? What's actually happening in the shower?
Neurologically speaking, when you are deeply focused on a problem, your prefrontal cortex is working hard, but it can get stuck in a rut.
Okay.
When you relax, like in the shower, or when waking up in the middle of the night, like Walsch did, a network in your brain called the default mode network takes over.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, it starts making broad, unusual connections between all those stored memories and concepts. When it finds a novel solution or a profound thought, it pushes it up into your conscious awareness.
Oh, wow.
Because you didn't feel yourself deliberately constructing the thought, it feels external. It feels like a revelation.
It's just your brain finally finishing a puzzle while your
Yeah.
conscious mind was distracted by the shampoo.
Precisely. The fact that a thought, a solution, or even a voice appears spontaneously without your deliberate effort does not prove it came from an external cosmic deity.
Right.
It just proves you have a healthy creative unconscious.
This raises an important question, though. Because if we apply this to Walsch, is Bandra saying Walsch was lying? That he just made it all up to sell books?
Not at all. And Bandra is very careful to clarify this. He explicitly says he does not deny Walsch's experience.
Okay.
He believes Walsch's experience was profound, it was transformative, and he was entirely sincere when he wrote it down. But sincerity does not establish the source of an experience.
Ah, that is such an important distinction. You can be 100% sincere and still be mistaken about where the information is coming from.
Exactly. An inner voice might contain profound wisdom that genuinely helps people, but it might also contain your own unexamined psychological conditioning, your cultural biases, your hidden desires, or just plain error.
Wow.
If we can map brain states that generate auditory imagery in complex language, but we cannot scientifically certify a metaphysical source for those states,
Right.
then the ultimate origin remains unknown. Bandra's advice is incredibly practical. Listen to the message, absolutely. Evaluate it. But do not prematurely deify the source.
Which brings us to the real danger here, the philosophical danger of saying God said.
Yes.
Because the moment you put those two words, God said, in front of a sentence, you change the rules of the game. You make that claim completely untouchable.
And that is the exact mechanism of how spiritual authority calcifies into dogma.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about how human inquiry works. If a spiritual teacher says, hey, this profound insight arose within me, let's talk about it, we are invited into a conversation.
Right. It's open?
We can examine it, we can debate it, we can test it against our own lives.
But if they say, God gave me this answer,
suddenly the conversation is over. Any disagreement feels like resistance to the divine.
Yes.
You aren't just questioning a guy named Neale anymore. You're defying the creator of the universe.
it's the ultimate trump card. It's a conversation stopper.
It really is.
And the source maps out this really tragic, predictable life cycle of how fresh spiritual movements slowly die and become the very thing they were trying to escape.
Oh, it's so common.
It starts with a genuine personal revelation. Then that revelation gets written down and becomes a book. The book becomes a formalized teaching.
Mm-hmm.
The teaching gathers a passionate community. And eventually, human nature kicks in. And that community starts treating those original words as unquestionable truth. A movement that started out trying to free people from rigid rule-based religion slowly hardens into a brand new, rigid structure of authority.
We've seen it happen in almost every major religious and spiritual tradition in history.
Right.
Truth needs no personal owner. Awakening needs no exclusive spokesperson. The moment someone claims divine authority for their specific insights, even if those insights are beautiful,
Yeah.
Bandra suggests that is the exact moment you should question them even more intensely.
Okay, so if we shouldn't blindly trust the voice in our head to hand us the ultimate truth, and we shouldn't trust anyone else claiming to speak for God, does absolute truth even exist?
Well, that's the big question.
This is the second massive disagreement between them. The paradox of absolute truth in a relative world.
Right. A major recurring theme in the Conversations with God teachings is this very modern, very popular idea that there is no absolute truth. Only relative truth that is encountered and defined individually. Bandra strongly, fundamentally rejects this.
So what does this all mean? The source uses this really clean, simple analogy about the weather to explain the difference.
I love this analogy.
If I step outside in a sweater and say, wow, the weather is so pleasantly cool today, and you step outside in a t-shirt and say, are you kidding? It is freezing cold. Those are relative truths.
The exact.
They are entirely based on our individual biology and perception, but the actual temperature reading on the thermometer, the fact that it is precisely 52 degrees, that's reality.
That is a perfect distillation of his argument. Bandra says we get into enormous philosophical trouble when we fail to distinguish between three distinct things.
Okay, what are they?
Reality itself, our perception of reality, and our description of reality. Our descriptions will always differ. Our perceptions are totally conditioned by our biology, our trauma, our history. But reality itself does not depend on our perception to exist. The map is not the territory.
I have to ask, because we see this everywhere now. Are we just clinging to this idea of personal relative truth to avoid the discomfort of ever being wrong?
It's highly likely.
It feels very modern to say, well, that's my truth, as a shield. It stops people from challenging our actions or our beliefs.
What's fascinating here is that basic philosophy exposes the logical flaw in that shield immediately. It's actually quite funny when you break it down.
Oh, really? How so?
If someone looks you in the eye and states, there is no absolute truth, you just have to ask them one question. Is that statement absolutely true?
Oh, wow. It's a trap. If they say yes, it implodes.
Exactly. If the statement there is no absolute truth is absolutely true, it contradicts itself, is a self-defeating proposition.
That is brilliant.
And if they backtrack and say, no, it's only relatively true for me, well, then we aren't required to accept it universally, and it holds no weight.
And if we look at the physical world, science makes this even more brutally clear. You cannot suspend the laws of gravity by choosing a different personal truth and stepping off a 10-story building. Gravity doesn't care about your personal truth.
A physical disease doesn't vanish just because you reject the diagnosis and substitute your own reality.
Right.
The scientific method operates on the premise that while human knowledge is provisional, we are always learning and updating our models.
Right.
Reality itself is not arbitrary. Reality has the final vote. It has the power to prove our beliefs mistaken.
But hold on, you're losing me a bit here. Because Bandra isn't saying that absolute truth is some doctrine written in a book, right?
No, not at all.
He calls absolute truth the knowing beyond knowledge. I read that and thought, what does it actually mean? You're saying absolute truth isn't a fact like water boils at 100 degrees, but just the feeling of existing. How is that a truth? That just sounds like a state of mind.
I understand why that sounds abstract, but let's break it down to your direct experience right now. For Bandra, the ultimate absolute truth isn't a sentence you can speak.
Okay.
It isn't a mathematical formula. It is the undeniable actuality of reality before we ever open our mouths to describe it.
Okay, wait, can you give me an example?
Think about it this way. Before you identify as a podcast host or an American or someone who is successful or wounded or happy,
Yeah.
before any of those adjectives attach to you, what is there?
Just, me being here.
Right. There is the immediate, undeniable, wordless fact of existence. I am.
I am.
That is the absolute. The content of your life, the weather, your job, your opinions will constantly change. But that immediate fact of being precedes every description.
Oh, I see.
You can doubt everything in the universe, but you cannot doubt that you exist to do the doubting.
I am. Okay, that is incredibly grounding. It strips away all the noise.
It really does.
But we need to shift gears entirely because we have to address the third and honestly the most intense disagreement in this essay.
Yes.
This is where things get really heavy and frankly where I get pretty fired up. We are talking about what I call the compassion trap.
Yes. This involves an idea found in the later teachings of the Conversations with God series, specifically in books like Home with God. And it is the suggestion that every tragedy, every suffering, and every death is ultimately chosen by the soul prior to the event for the purpose of its own evolution.
Here's where it gets really interesting and where I struggle to keep my cool.
I understand why.
Why do we feel this obsessive, desperate need to narrate other people's trauma? Why do we have to turn every senseless, brutal tragedy into a neatly packaged cosmic lesson?
It's a defense mechanism.
Did an abused child choose that experience to learn forgiveness? Did victims of a natural disaster or a genocide select that experience from a spiritual menu before they were born?
Yeah.
Isn't it sometimes just awful, random, and heartbreaking with absolutely no silver lining?
The psychology of why we do this is very well documented. Humans are meaning-making machines.
Right.
When we are faced with chaotic, senseless suffering, it terrifies us. It induces cognitive dissonance. We want to believe the universe makes sense, that it is fair, and that we are safe.
Well, of course.
This is often called the just world fallacy.
Right. Bad things happen for a reason. Therefore, if I understand the reason, I can protect myself.
Precisely. But Bandra warns that when you apply this metaphysical concept to actual human suffering, it is both morally dangerous and psychologically harmful.
Extremely.
While the idea might offer a shred of comfort to a specific person when they are contemplating their own mortality, applying it as a blanket rule to others triggers two devastating effects.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, it causes immense crushing guilt.
Because if my soul chose this awful thing, then on some level I caused it. I wanted it. It's my fault.
Exactly.
It's essentially victim blaming, but we put a soft, spiritual Instagram filter over it. I had a friend who got very sick, and someone in their spiritual community actually told them they were manifesting the illness to learn a boundary lesson.
Oh, that is awful.
It was incredibly toxic.
That is a perfect tragic example. And that leads to the second effect, spiritual bypassing.
What does that mean exactly?
When you tell someone their tragedy is a divine choice, you strip them of their right to feel natural human grief, anger, and vulnerability.
Right, because they're supposed to be enlightened about it.
Yes. They feel pressured to slap a serene smile on their face and call their nightmare part of a beautiful cosmic plan. But genuine psychological healing does not require us to pretend that suffering is secretly desirable.
And if we look at the physical reality, there is zero evidence for this soul contract theory. Right.
None whatsoever.
Cancer involves genetic mutations and biological processes. Car accidents emerge from physical conditions, physics, and probabilities. Systemic violence is the result of intergenerational trauma, power dynamics, and social breakdown.
Exactly.
Imagination is not evidence.
Right. There is zero evidence that an immaterial soul sits in an etheric waiting room and selects a devastating accident from a venue to learn a lesson.
So how do we deal with it then?
Well, this brings us to the practical application, everyday living. What does true compassion actually look like in the face of suffering? Bandra's advice here is incredibly grounded and urgent. When someone is suffering, do not offer them a metaphysical explanation.
Do not tell them everything happens for a reason. Do not tell them your soul chose this.
No, listen to them. Bring them food. Hold their hand. help them navigate the medical system, challenge the social injustices that contributed to their suffering.
Just be a human being.
As Bandra points out so astutely, our grand spiritual explanations are often just psychological shields. We use them to protect ourselves from the extreme discomfort of feeling another person's raw pain.
Because it's much easier to say it's a cosmic lesson than it is to sit in the messy, agonizing reality of someone's grief.
Exactly.
If that oneness we talked about earlier is real, if we really are all waves in the same ocean, then their suffering isn't just their private spiritual homework that they chose.
No, it's not.
It's a call for us to participate, to help, to be the ocean supporting the wave.
Exactly. Honest, mature spirituality must include the capacity to look at a tragedy and say, I do not know. We don't know why every specific terrible thing happens. And that unknown, that uncertainty, isn't a failure of spiritual wisdom. It is the birthplace of true humility.
The birthplace of humility. I love that so much. So let's pull all of this together.
Okay.
The mission of this deep dive was to evaluate conversations with God through all these different perspectives, guided by Joe Bandra's critique.
Right.
And the ultimate takeaway seems to be a deep, profound respect for the questions, but a very healthy, rigorous skepticism of the answers.
Yes. Walsch absolutely deserves honor. He had the courage to question the inherited, frightening, authoritarian image of God he was given by traditional religion.
He really did open a lot of doors.
He helped millions of people transition to a concept of reality associated with love, unity, and process, rather than fear, judgment, and punishment.
But we have to take the next step. We have to grow up spiritually. We have to question his answers, too. We can't just swap out the unquestionable authority of a priest or an ancient text for the unquestionable authority of a new spiritual paperback and assume our journey is complete.
Bandra's final call to action is a pivot toward inward observation.
What does that look like?
When an insight arises, don't just blindly believe every internal voice. Observe the movement of consciousness itself.
Okay.
Ask yourself, who is asking the question right now? And who is hearing the answer? Is this answer coming from my conditioning, my fear of the unknown, my desire to feel special?
Right.
Or is it something beyond all of that?
It's about finding that ultimate, absolute truth we discussed.
Okay.
Finding the silence. The source beautifully suggests that the true conversation with God might not be in English.
No.
It might not be words on a yellow legal pad. It is the beating of your heart. It's the silence between your thoughts.
It is the moment the presumed separation between you, God, and reality simply becomes quiet.
Yeah.
The true conversation might just be the moment the anxious questioner disappears entirely, leaving only the miracle of being.
Which brings us right back to where we started. That man in 1995, sitting in the dark, desperate, writing his angry letter to the void.
Right.
We said at the beginning that usually dropping a letter into that bottomless well is met with silence.
Yeah.
And we view that silence as an absence. But maybe that silence isn't a void at all.
It's not.
Maybe that silence is the answer.
Yeah.
It's reality just existing before the human mind rushes in to name it, divide it, and claim to own it.
That is a profound way to look at it. The silence isn't an absence, it's the absolute presence of reality.
And that leaves me with one final thought for everyone listening. Something to chew on after this deep dive ends.
Okay.
We spend so much of our time, our energy, and our money trying to articulate our personal truth.
We really do.
We are obsessed with narrating our lives, constantly trying to assign divine meaning or spiritual lessons to every coincidence, every breakup, and every tragedy. But if the ultimate reality is actually this wordless state where the ego drops away and the questioner just disappears into the quiet miracle of being, is our modern obsession with constantly finding ourselves and defining our personal truth actually the very thing preventing us from experiencing true connection?
A powerful, challenging question to sit with.
Thanks for exploring it with us. Until next time.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might benefit from the conversation. Your support helps us continue exploring the deepest questions of life, consciousness, and reality. I am Julia Carter, and it is my honor to introduce Joe Bandra, author, philosopher, speaker, healthcare technology pioneer, and lifelong explorer of life's questions. Through his writing, Joe bridges science, philosophy, psychology, spirituality, and direct experience in a search for truth. His first book, Finding Nevaeh, is a transformative journey of self-discovery and the search for lasting happiness. His second book, Body, Mind, and Machine, chronicles his remarkable career and the evolution of healthcare technology. His next book, The Nature of Reality, explores consciousness, existence, and the mysteries at the heart of human experience. Joe's work invites us to look beyond what we think we know and awaken to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe we inhabit.
Life often feels like an endless list of tasks, constant noise and distractions, pulling us in every direction. We're all searching for happiness, but what if we've been looking in the wrong places all along?
This was Nevaeh's journey. Lost in the noise, she felt cut off from the peace and happiness she longed for, until she met Joe Bandra, an unconventional, insightful philosopher with a different perspective. Jay, as he is simply known, didn't hand her a map. He gave her something far more valuable, a compass, a way to turn inward, navigate her own thoughts, and uncover the clarity hidden beneath the chaos.
Readers around the world have been touched and inspired by finding Nevaeh.
Your journey to inner peace begins now. Get your copy of Finding Nevaeh, available on Amazon and at findingnevaeh.org, or listen to the audiobook on Audible, Spotify, Apple, and other platforms.